to Secret Mom Hacks, episode number 46. My name is Krista, and I am your host. It's December 20th, 2023, and we are settling into the home stretch with just 5 days left until Christmas. So when my next episode comes out, Christmas will have passed, and we'll all be looking ahead in anticipation of the new year, 2024. So hard to believe. It really is the truth. As you get older, when we're younger, it seems like time just crawls at a snail's pace. But then when you get older, time just goes by way, way too fast. So wherever you are, whatever you celebrate, from our family to yours, I wish you the merriest of Christmases and all the joy that comes with celebrating this season. Okay, for today's episode, we are jumping back in for part 2 of my interview with Lo Negrosh, the amazing mom, doula, birth educator, IBCLC, which stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, and podcast host of the Milk Making Minutes. Now, if you missed last week's episode, stop right here. Go back and listen to Secret Mom Hacks episode number 45 because we covered lots of territory. We talked about the importance of community, relinquishing control, and some of the reasons breastfeeding can be so challenging. So once you've checked out episode number 45, that just builds a really good base for moving forward in today's conversation. So come back here, pick back up right here for today's episode. Lo shared a ton of helpful info, so grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and get ready to take more notes because you don't want to forget the great tips she shares. But before we get into that, I just want to say thanks for tuning in, Mama. I started this podcast because babies don't come with instructions. As of this recording, I am chasing around a 5-year-old that no amount of Googling, mom groups, or books were able to prepare me for. There's a lot of stuff people don't talk about when it comes to pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, and postpartum. And as someone who was previously terrified of all of the above, I'm here to help you pull back the curtain on all of it. And every now and then, it may get a little messy. We may share a little TMI, but that's why you're here, right? My goal is you'll leave every episode feeling refreshed, inspired, and hopeful, knowing you are not on this mom journey alone. Now, there's a lot of subject matter to cover when it comes to mom life, and we are covering it all. So let's jump back into part 2 of my chat with Lo, host of the Milk Making Minutes podcast.
So we've talked a little bit about this support and the importance of finding that breastfeeding support network. And as I'd shared with you earlier too, I did work with a lactation consultant right out of the hospital, and knowing what I know now, I would have done research earlier. And certainly there were other opportunities where I probably could have continued on in some other learnings with her. But let's talk about just creating, finding, and building, plugging into breastfeeding. That's something I'm sure she could have helped me do at that time, a breastfeeding support network. What does that look like? Regardless of, I'm sure every town and community looks different, but how can new moms find and or build that? And what role does online support play in this? Because I think you mentioned some Facebook groups, for example.
Yeah, I would start by looking up which in-person support groups or local virtual support groups are in your area. So sometimes, especially since COVID, a lot of the support groups have continued to stay virtual, but they're still facilitated by local people, and it's local members that are popping in to join. And so that allows you to build relationships with other local people so that you can be real life friends outside of the virtual setting, which I find to be really important. So you can start by looking at La Leche League International and Breastfeeding USA. Those are two peer-led support groups whose training for the peer supporters is very extensive, and they really do know their scope. So you're going to get really good evidence-based advice when you ask questions there. But if they feel like something that you're dealing with is beyond a peer support group, then they are going to refer you to IBCLCs. And they're going to know the IBCLCs that are really great in your area. And you can start finding those people during pregnancy. And if you just go to their websites, you can look on a map or using your zip code to find the peer support leaders in your area and ask if they're hosting virtual groups. The other thing you can do is just search for IBCLCs in your area. You can go to the United States Lactation Consultants Association website and you can find IBCLCs that way using your zip code, or in about 13 states, zipmilk.org is also available. And you just put in your zip code and it shows not just IBCLCs, but all lactation supporters, including peer support groups. So anyone who wants to get listed there can. And so you can find people that way in about 13 states, and they're constantly expanding. So you can check back there. And then another thing to do is to call your local hospital, because many of the hospitals know which support groups are running. And so if you call your hospital's postpartum floor, they'll be able to tell you where there are support groups in your area. Sometimes there are support groups that take place directly in the hospital, but I'm seeing now that most of the time those are happening outside of the hospital setting. Baby Cafe is another group that has postpartum support groups, and those are usually run by IBCLCs. And usually you can come in and get your baby weighed and talk to other people and then have any questions or just socialize. And then often many of the IBCLCs have support groups themselves that they might run monthly or weekly. And I always tell people, just like any other provider, you might find an IBCLC who is not your cup of tea. And that might not be the person that you would like to interact with as your provider or in a support group setting. And so find the right one and then figure out from that person if they have a support group, and if not, if they know of any support groups that are available, because they usually will for your local area.
That is so helpful. I wish I would have known all of that 5.5 years ago.
I
That's so
know.
good.
Yeah. I tell you, when I was struggling, I went to a hospital-based breastfeeding support group from my IBCLC for months, and it was so helpful. It was just once a month, but I went every single month, and sometimes I didn't have a question or anything. I just needed to sit in a room with other people feeding their babies and hear what their struggles were and talk about mine. And finally, one day after class, my IBCLC came to me and she said, "You know, you might really like going to a Breastfeeding USA support group because there's lots of older babies there." And I looked around and I realized, oh my gosh, I have this huge baby. And all the other babies in the support group are like newborns or like 1 or 2 months old. And I was like, I'm picking up what you're putting down. I got it. Like, it's time for me to move on. She did it so nicely. Of course, if it was the only place for me to go, she would have welcomed me, but I think she knew that I had outgrown that group and I needed more people who were really my peers. And so I did. There were several breastfeeding. I lived in Connecticut at the time, and there were several Breastfeeding USA groups that were thriving at the time. And sometimes I would just go and cry, and that's just what I needed to do. And I was able to hold it together every other day of the week and of the month, but I just needed to go and express to other people how hard it was. And then I could get it out of my system and then keep going. And it was so helpful to me. So I ended up becoming a peer supporter with Breastfeeding USA. I'm still involved with them as a peer supporter. And so I'm telling you, just getting in a room with other people, it's magic.
I cannot agree more. Now, I did not plug into any groups like what you're talking about. I wish I would have. Knowing what I know now and knowing what is out there, I I wish I would have done that. I was just surrounded by coworkers, many of whom were not parents.
Mhm.
And my immediate circle of friends was not, they weren't parents. I'm an only child. The closest thing I have to a sister is my cousin, and she only has brothers. So we really look at each other like the sisters we never had. And we were both at each other's kiddos' births, and she's really been the one that I can plug
Mhm.
into and talk with about a lot of things. But I can only imagine how empowering that was for you to walk into those groups, kind of like what you were saying. You probably just walk in and feel like probably some weight lifted because you know you're going to walk in to a room with people who understand what you're going through and can relate and just listen or help or point to resources or whatever. That when you don't have something like that, it can just be very stressful.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. You asked the question about the online groups and how that fits in. And I do think that the online groups have provided something for people and that it is a place to ask questions. But I spend a lot of time in these online groups and the big, huge, massive 50,000 people groups. I really encourage people not to go there to ask your questions because I see a lot of non helpful responses to breastfeeding questions or questions that just throw people off. And I hesitate to be critical of that because for so many years, the way that humans fed their human babies was through the support of other humans. But those were real humans that you knew in your life. And I think it's very different when you go on and you ask a question because you're doubting yourself or you're doubting some aspect of how you're nurturing your baby. And then 50,000 strangers get to weigh in on the decision that you're making. That's very different than asking a close circle of friends or your cousin or your sister. And I know it feels a little better when there's some anonymity, like, man, I don't want to ask my sister because she's too opinionated, or my mom just doesn't get breastfeeding. She hasn't done it. So that's why I encourage you to find the local group of people who have done it. And I have lots of people who have shared stories on the Milk Making Minutes. One of my very early stories when my format was totally different. She desperately wanted to breastfeed, but had had a breast reduction surgery, so wasn't sure if she was going to be able to. She joined a La Leche group when she was pregnant. She attended regularly. She ended up attempting to breastfeed, really produced very little milk, switching to formula by a couple of months with both of her kids. But she still attended that La Leche League meeting every single week because it just provided her that support and solidarity for the way she wanted to nurture her children. And nobody cared that she was feeding her babies formula in a bottle in the middle of the La Leche League meeting. But they did understand that she was mourning her loss of breastfeeding, which so many other people don't understand. So many other people are like, get over it. I fed my baby formula and they're fine. And they don't allow people to mourn the loss of something they wanted so badly. And so finding that group of people who really do get it, but will allow you to take the twists and turns as they come and not judge that either, is so critical.
Because there will be twists and turns.
Yes.
Yes.
Undoubtedly. Yes.
Yes.
Now, let's take a quick break. Hey, Secret Mom hackers. Are you a budget-savvy family looking for a financial tool that can help you take control of your spending and savings? Well, I've got something fantastic to share with you. Cube Money. Cube Money is the ultimate budgeting solution that's tailor-made for families who want to manage their money with ease and precision. Here's why our family loves it. It's just like the envelope system we all know, but digitized. Imagine the simplicity of old school envelope budgeting, but with a modern twist. Cube Money digitizes the envelope system, allowing you to allocate funds to specific spending categories right from your smartphone. It's like having a set of virtual envelopes for groceries, entertainment, and more, all in one app. The whole family benefits. Cube Money isn't just for individuals. It's designed to accommodate the needs of your entire family. You can set up sub-accounts for your spouse and kids, helping everyone stay on the same financial page. It's a powerful tool for teaching financial responsibility to your children. stress-free savings. Planning for the future is a breeze with Cube Money. You can easily allocate funds for savings goals, whether it's a family vacation, a new home, or an emergency fund. It's all about turning your financial dreams into reality. So if you're ready to simplify your family's budgeting, track your spending with precision, and achieve your financial goals, give Cube Money a try. Visit their website at Cube Money to learn more. That's QUBE money.com to learn more and use the discount code SECRETMOMHACKS, all one word, SECRETMOMHACKS, to get 2 months of their premium or family plans for free. Cube Money, on a mission to see you live more and worry less. Try Cube Money today. Now back to the show.
Well, so breastfeeding and health and nutrition are closely linked. So, what dietary recommendations can you offer to new moms to ensure that they are getting the nutrients they need while breastfeeding?
Yeah, I have a couple of episodes about this. And what's interesting is if you ask somebody in India and you ask somebody in Mexico and you ask somebody in Germany and you ask somebody here what they should be eating while breastfeeding their baby, you are going to get, did I just name 5 different countries? You're going to get 5 different responses because this is very cultural. So what we know is that people who are feeding human milk to human babies from their own bodies should be eating to satiate their hunger and drinking to satiate their thirst. They should not be suppressing their hunger signals. They should be noticing when they're thirsty because so many of us are in this state of dehydration all the time because we're busy and we don't take the time to drink. So, really noticing when we do need to drink and taking the time to do that, but not worrying so much about caloric intake or macronutrients or which certain types of foods to eat, but just eating to satisfy our hunger and noticing the impact that has on our body and eating really nutrient dense foods as much as we can and noticing the impact that the foods have on our energy level, but also knowing that we live now in a society where we are expected to feed our babies between 8 and 15 times a day, depending on how frequently your baby feeds, feed ourselves, feed our partners, feed other children living in the house, wash all the laundry, keep the house clean, and do all the things we did before we had this baby and look as if we never had a baby. That's the societal standard. And so I try with my clients to kind of gently teach this idea that what if we weren't supposed to look as if we never had a baby? What if our bodies change for a reason? What if the extra fat stores are meant to help us feed our babies? And for some people, they swear that breastfeeding helped them lose weight. For others, they swear it was harder to lose weight. And the studies indicate that this is basically true, that for some of us, it helps us get the weight off, and for others, it does not. And so I just encourage people to eat the foods they love to eat, try to get in as much nutrient dense food as they can, and to not worry so much about the macronutrients unless there is a reason to. So if you have some sort of nutritional deficiency, which has come up in your blood work with your doctor that you need to be concerned about, or you have diabetes or something, then, let's talk about that. And we'll look at the nutrients to make sure that you are both taking care of your baby and your milk supply and yourself. But to just focus on getting the food in your mouth so that you're not hungry and doing it in a way that you're not feeling guilty about the food you're eating, because adding on guilt on top of everything else isn't helpful.
That's a great response, truly. I know that's something would have needed to hear, and I'm sure many other mamas appreciate that response as well.
And I also try to help people think, like, what are the ways? I know it's hard to spend more money when you're already spending so much more money on like a new human in your house, but what are the ways that you can like reduce your load if you do want to be eating like really nutrient dense food? Like, can you buy pre-cut up fruits and veggies so that you can just grab it right away? Or can you just keep tons of nuts in your house so you can just grab a handful? Because I know for me, when I was in the throes of breastfeeding, like, I just wanted food in my mouth. I didn't actually care what it was. And so sometimes I was just grabbing like the cookies because that was the easiest thing to grab. And so if you can spend a little more money on the nutrient dense foods that are pre prepared because you don't have time to make the beautiful salad, then you might find you feel better. And it's not actually about the milk supply, really. The milk, there are studies to show that even in places where there is famine, people are still able to provide milk for their babies if they had enough food before the famine. So, how much you eat and drink has very little to do with how much milk you produce. The milk you produce has more to do with how much you feed your baby. And so it's not really connected to nutrition. So the nutrition is just about taking care of yourself more than it is about feeding your baby.
Right, that was something, again, I didn't know until I don't remember if my consultant had mentioned this or not, but it was the more the baby feeds, the more your body will make.
Mhm.
So, it's fascinating.
Mm.
Our bodies are incredible, incredible things, truly. It's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, as we come to a close, Lo, talk with us about you're a busy mom of two. You have a podcast, you are an IBCLC, you're a doula, you're a partner, you stay busy, you're juggling lots of things as so many of us are. So how do you keep it all together?
I don't. That's that's the long and short of it. I don't. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge this. Like, if I could pay for a maid, if I could pay for a chef, if I had full-time childcare. I homeschool my kids too, so I don't know if you knew that, but I homeschool both of my kids. This year they are now going to a forest school 3 days a week. So that is something I've decided to take off my plate finally. And so they are out. It's raining today, and it was difficult to get them out the door and to their forest school. My son in particular, who really doesn't want to be there in the first place because he likes being at home reading all day, and you know, he doesn't wanna be anywhere else but at home unless he's playing with friends. So, if you saw my house on any given day, it could look like a total disaster. And this is another thing I've just had to let go of. I do not have a house that would look like it should be in a magazine. My laundry, sometimes we are struggling to find clean socks in the morning. Like, I just prioritize the things I can prioritize, and I have a mental breakdown about every 5 to 6 weeks, and I have to yesterday, I spent all day in bed. I had a migraine, and I spent all day in bed, and my husband took care of the kids, he took them to the lake, he did all the things. I woke up around dinner time, I felt much better, and I think it's important for us to acknowledge this because we cannot do it all. And we did not, humans are not supposed to do it all. And we're all trying. And I just want all of your listeners and all of my listeners to know that as moms, we are all doing our best. We can be working moms, we can homeschool, and we can work. We can try our best, but it does not mean that every part of our lives needs to be put together. And the things that I have decided to sacrifice are a clean house and clean dishes and clean socks. And so that means that sometimes we really struggle to find clean dishes for dinner, and that's okay. And I wish it weren't so, but I just don't have the money for a maid or for a chef. And so that's just how it has to be.
And what is one tip, trick, or piece of advice you would share with another mama right now?
So, the thing I think that has changed my life in the last few years was finding your unicorn space. That was written by, that's a book written by Eve Rodsky. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she
Mm-mm.
is a researcher, a journalist, and an author who talks about this balance of work between moms and dads specifically, and how so much of it tends to fall on women. And the thing that I heard her talk about, I actually have not read the book, but I heard when it came out, I heard her talk on multiple podcasts about the concept. And she talked about how the happiest people are the people who have their unicorn space. And a unicorn space is a place where it's just yours, it doesn't belong to your family. It is a place where you can be social, where you can be creative, and it brings you joy. And that is when I had thought, I had been wanting to start the Milk Making Minutes for years, and I just had not done it. And after, it can be connected to work or not connected to work. So if you used to write a lot and you want to start writing, do it. If you love to knit and you just not haven't found the time, join a knitter circle, but it needs to be social. So it can't be just you sitting on the couch. It needs to be with other people. And so I really wanted to start the Milk Making Minutes. I hadn't done it. And I heard her and I was like, that is going to be my unicorn space. That is going to be the space that is all mine, that brings me joy, that allows me to be creative, that helps me to socialize with other people. For me, it happens to be connected to my work. And so I encourage other moms to find that, whatever it is. It could be connected to something you used to do, or it could be something new that you haven't done before. And it could be something that you do once a week, or once a day, or once a month, depending on how intense it is. But find something that's all yours, that has nothing to do with your children or your family, that allows you to be social and creative and joyful, that you get to do and invest in, that makes you happy. And I think it will help you feel happier around your family when you get to do it.
That is such valuable feedback right there, valuable insight. I haven't heard of that book, but just the whole concept of what you're sharing, I think all of us mamas need to hear for
Yeah.
sure. And I'm definitely going to look into that
Yeah. I mean,
book.
it's not
I do
my
enjoy reading.
concept. It's not my concept, but it
Yes,
changed
it's
my
the
life when I implemented it. Yeah.
sure. Well, Lo, this has been a blast. What did I not ask you that you wish I would have asked that you feel that's important to share?
If people want to connect with me, if you are pregnant, or if you are in the postpartum period and you're struggling with breastfeeding, I do consults both in person and virtually. So I would love to be the person that helps you figure out your situation and helps you figure out just what the next right step is. That's all I ask of my clients. We don't get into let's help you breastfeed for the next 500 years. We just say, what do you need to do next? And that's all any of us can ask for ourselves. So if you want to connect with me, all my stuff will be in the show notes and you can do that. And I would love to help you with that. And if you think you have a story that you would like to share on the Milk Making Minutes about your breastfeeding experience and how the social or medical barriers impacted that, I would love to hear it. So you can connect with me about that.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode. Thanks again to Lo for making time to speak with me and being a part of the Secret Mom Hacks podcast. Don't forget to check out her socials linked in the show notes over at secretmomhacks.com/episode 46. If you're pregnant or nursing, or you know someone who is, you'll definitely want to follow along for Lo's unique perspective and incredibly helpful tips from childbirth to feeding your baby. I'm curious what your favorite part of our interview was. I hope you're walking away inspired with tips either for yourself or that new mom you know. If that's the case, please subscribe for free if you haven't already. Give me a 5-star rating and leave a review sharing your favorite takeaway so far. Don't forget to stop by secretmomhacks.com where you can find transcripts, resources, and more. Stay tuned for next week's episode, and until then, you've got this, mama.